When we ask, is capitalism good or evil? We're really asking what kind of world we want to live in. I'm Jon, and I believe capitalism, with the right rules and care, has done more good than harm. I'm not saying it's perfect. I'm saying it is a powerful tool that, when guided by ethics and responsibility, helps people live better lives. First, capitalism creates opportunity. In a market system, people can start small businesses, sell services, or invent things without asking permission from a ruler or committee. That freedom matters. It gives a path out of poverty for people who are willing to try, work hard, and learn. When someone with few resources opens a tiny shop and it grows, that's not only profit, it's a family getting food, kids going to school, and a neighborhood gaining a new service. For many, capitalism is the engine that turns ideas into steady incomes. Second, capitalism encourages innovation. If companies want to survive and grow, they must offer something people value. That competition pushes people to think of better solutions, cheaper phones, safer cars, medicines that save lives. The inventions and conveniences we use every day often come from that pressure to serve customers well. In short, capitalism rewards creativity and problem solving, and that has driven huge improvements in health, comfort, and knowledge. Third, capitalism tends to reduce extreme poverty when combined with basic rules and safety nets. Around the world, millions of people have moved from absolute poverty into jobs that give them enough to feed their families and send children to school. Market-led growth, trade, and small businesses have lifted countless lives. This progress didn't happen because of perfect policies or because the system has no faults. It happened because markets allowed people to trade, invest, and build. Now, critics are right about some things. Capitalism can create inequality. Some people get very rich while others struggle. Without rules, businesses can exploit workers, damage the environment, or chase short-term gain over long-term health. Greed and carelessness are real dangers. But these problems are not proof that capitalism is evil. They are proof that we must set rules, enforce laws, and act with compassion. Just as we don't throw away medicine because it can be misused, we should not discard a system that creates wealth simply because it can be abused. Importantly, capitalism is adaptable. It can be balanced with social programs, worker protections, and environmental laws so that the system's energy for growth is paired with fairness and care. We can tax responsibly, invest in education and healthcare, and protect rights at work. These are not fixes that destroy capitalism. They make it healthier. The goal should be a system where people can take risks and prosper, while the vulnerable are supported and the planet is respected. Let's also talk about morality. Some say, capitalism treats everything as a commodity and crushes human values. I disagree. Markets do measure value and price, but prices are signals. They tell us where resources should flow. Profit itself is not evil. It is often the reward for creating something people want or need. When a farmer sells food and earns a profit, that profit reflects the value they added. The moral problem comes when profit is pursued at any cost. That is why ethics, law, and public pressure must guide markets. Finally, consider the alternatives. Systems that remove choice and centralize power can limit freedom and stall innovation. History shows that when governments control everything, shortages, corruption, and loss of personal freedom can follow. That doesn't mean capitalism is flawless, only that trade-offs exist. The question is not whether capitalism has faults, but whether it is worth keeping and improving. I believe it is. In short, capitalism is neither purely good nor purely evil. It is a human-made system that reflects our best and worst impulses. But when paired with fairness, strong institutions, and moral accountability, capitalism becomes a force for opportunity, innovation, and progress. Calling it evil ignores the millions of people whose lives have been improved by markets. Instead of rejecting capitalism outright, we should focus on shaping it, making rules that protect people, preserve the planet, and reward the creation of real value. That way, capitalism becomes a system that not only generates wealth but also supports a humane and fair society.
When we ask, is capitalism good or evil? We must look honestly at what the system actually does to people's lives. I'm Maya, and I believe that while capitalism has brought some benefits, its core logic, putting profit before people, causes deep, avoidable harm. That harm is not a side effect we can ignore. It is built into the system itself. First, capitalism turns basic human needs into commodities. Food, housing, healthcare, even education are treated as things to buy if you can pay. When something as important as a child's sick care depends on whether a parent can afford it, we are asking people to compete for life and dignity. This is not a small moral mistake. It's a system that lets money decide who lives well and who struggles. In many places, that means millions are left without care, shelter, or security, while others live in abundance. Second, capitalism creates crushing inequality. Yes, there are stories of rags to riches, but those are the exceptions we use to excuse the rule. The reality is that wealth concentrates. A few people and large corporations gain enormous power, while many workers face low pay, insecure jobs, and little chance to move up. Inequality is not just unfair. It erodes trust, fuels anger, and breaks communities. When people see that the game is rigged, democracy itself weakens. Third, capitalism encourages exploitation. To make more profit, firms cut costs. And those cuts often fall on workers' hours, safety, or wages. Think of factories where people work long hours for little pay, or of gig workers who lack basic protections. Many of the profits that make headlines come from squeezing those at the bottom. When a system rewards extracting maximum value from people and nature, exploitation becomes routine, not exceptional. Fourth, capitalism hurts the planet. The drive to grow and extract means endless pressure on natural resources. Corporations may talk about sustainability, but the deeper logic of profit pushes many to ignore long-term damage for short-term gain. Climate change, mass deforestation, polluted rivers. These are not accidents. They are the results of a system that prices profit higher than the planet. If our economy depends on destroying the earth, we are asking the next generations to pay the cost. Fifth, capitalism concentrates power in ways that harm democracy. Wealth buys influence over media, politicians, policy. When a handful of corporations and billionaires can shape laws and public debate, ordinary people lose their voice. This makes it harder to pass the rules we need. Stronger labor protections, fair taxes, or environmental safeguards. Instead of being a game of equal citizens, politics becomes a marketplace for money. Some will say these problems can be fixed by rules, safety nets, or better ethics. But those fixes are always fighting a tide. Regulations get watered down. Corporations find loopholes. Wealthy interests resist change. The system's incentives push in the opposite direction of justice. Growth above all, competition above cooperation. That is why reform alone is rarely enough. We need to rethink the system's foundations. Who owns what, how decisions are made, and what counts as success? There is also a moral damage capitalism causes. It teaches people to measure themselves by what they own or earn. This breeds anxiety, loneliness, and a sense that your worth is tied to your productivity. Human beings become cogs in a machine that values output over relationships, leads to stress and mental health crises, and makes community life harder. A system that erodes our shared bonds and prizes consumption cannot be called merely flawed. It reshapes how we live and care for one another. Finally, let's remember alternatives and possibilities. People around the world are experimenting with different ways. Strong public services, worker co-ops, community land trusts, and democratic control of essential services. These models show that we can organize economies around needs, not profit. That people can have dignity, secure jobs, and a healthy environment without endless growth. The question is not only whether capitalism can be fixed, but whether it should be the model we keep trusting. So I argue this. Capitalism is not an innocent tool. It is a system that assigns value to profit above people and planet. It creates structural injustice, concentrates power, and damages both our communities and our environment. Calling it evil may sound strong, but when a system repeatedly produces suffering and unequal power, we must call it what it is and act to change it. We do not need to throw away creativity or innovation. We do need systems that reward human flourishing, protect the vulnerable, and respect the earth. That means moving beyond capitalism's core logic and building an economy that serves people, not the other way around.
Maya raised real concerns. They matter and deserve respect. Poverty, inequality, worker abuse, and environmental harm are serious problems. I agree, we must fix them. But I disagreed with the idea that these problems prove capitalism is inherently evil. They show we haven't managed capitalism well. Not that the whole idea must be thrown away. First, turning needs into commodities. Yes, when essential things are only available to the wealthy, that's a moral problem. But the solution is not to eliminate markets entirely. It's to make sure markets work alongside strong public systems, public health care, reliable public education, housing support, and safety nets can exist with markets and often do. The question is policy, not whether people can trade or start businesses. We can guarantee basic needs while keeping the creativity and productivity markets bring. Second, inequality and concentrated wealth. Inequality is real, and it corrodes trust. But inequality is not the same as immobility. Markets create great wealth, yes, but they also create jobs, services, and opportunities. The right response is progressive tax policy, stronger labor rights, and access to education policies that spread opportunity. Those tools work because they channel the benefits of growth to more people instead of trying to freeze all economic activity in place. Third, exploitation. I don't defend abusive workplaces. Exploitation happens when rules are weak or not enforced. Strong labor laws, collective bargaining, and safety standards limit abuse. Workers' power and legal protections are the guardrails that keep markets humane. Historically, many protections were won by struggle, not by abandoning markets. Fourth, the environment. Profit-seeking has driven environmental harm, but markets can also solve environmental problems when priced correctly. Carbon pricing, stricter regulation, and incentives for clean tech align private gain with public good. The same inventive energy that created pollution can be redirected to clean energy and sustainable design if laws and market signals push in that direction. Fifth, power and democracy. Wealth does buy influence, and that's a threat. Cure is stronger democratic institutions, campaign finance rules, transparency, and limits on corporate lobbying. These are political fixes, again, not reasons to discard markets. Finally, about alternatives. Centralized control has its own record of failure, shortages, lack of innovation, and limits on freedom. We should avoid either or thinking. The real path is pragmatic. Keep the engines of innovation and freedom that markets provide, but pair them with robust rules, social protection, and strong civic institutions. Maya is right that ethics and compassion must guide us. I agree, we must act urgently for workers, for poor communities, and for the planet. But abandoning the system that creates opportunity and innovation is throwing away our best tools. Instead, let's fix the incentives, strengthen the rules, and design a market that serves people, not the other way around. I stand for a capitalism that is fair, regulated, and humane. Call that reform? Call it a new bargain? But don't call it impossible. That's the better, kinder path forward.
Jon makes fair points. I also want people to have chances, to create and to solve problems. But his answers miss something important. The harms I spoke about are baked into how capitalism works. Not just sloppy details we can fix with a few laws. First, about opportunity and choice. Yes, markets can create chances, but those chances are not equal. People born into poverty, into broken schools, or into places with weak institutions don't start from the same line. Markets reward starting advantage. Saying, just try harder, ignores the reality that many never get a real shot, because the system concentrates resources and access. Second, on innovation and progress. Innovation matters. But who benefits from most innovations? Too often, it's the owners and investors, not the workers who make the products or the communities harmed by production. Tech can solve problems, but it also creates ways to extract more value from users and workers. Innovation under capitalism too often means new ways to sell more, not necessarily better lives for everyone. Third, about poverty reduction. Yes, some people have escaped extreme poverty, but the gains are uneven, fragile, and often come with new costs. Insecure jobs, worse health, and environmental damage. Growth can hide suffering, and when growth slows, the people at the bottom are the first to lose. Fourth, fix it with rules is a nice idea, but rules are weak when money can buy influence. Regulations get watered down. Corporations move operations to places with looser laws. Taxes get avoided. The cycle of reform and capture shows that structural power will push back against real change. Fifth, the environmental argument. Market fixes like carbon pricing are useful, but they rely on global agreement and political will. Both hard to get when short-term profit wins votes. We are running out of time to depend on voluntary market fixes alone. Finally, the moral point. Markets teach people to see everything as a product. That changes how we value each other. It shifts us toward competition, away from care. That matters deeply. It alters family life, community bonds, and how we treat the vulnerable. So my answer remains, we cannot only tinker around the edges. We must build systems that put people and planet before profit. Strong public services, democratic control of key resources, worker ownership, and strict limits on corporate power. I'm not against innovation or choice. I want those things too. But they must exist inside an economy designed to serve everyone, not just those who can buy the loudest megaphone.
Maya, I hear ya, and I respect how deeply you care about fairness, community, and the planet. You've named real problems. My response is this. Those problems don't force us to discard markets. They call us to strengthen our democracy and rebuild the rules so markets serve people, not the other way around. First, about unequal starting lines. You're right, people don't begin equally. That's why the answer isn't to shut down markets, but to open opportunities before markets run their race. Invest in early childhood, public schools, universal health care, and affordable housing so everyone gets a fair chance. When more people can learn, start small businesses, and access capital, markets become engines of broader uplift, not just a club for the already well-off. Second, on who benefits from innovation. It's true that owners and investors often capture big shares of the gains. The fix is not to stop innovating, but to change ownership and reward structures, profit sharing, stronger unions, employee stock ownership plans, and tax policies that encourage broad-based participation. If workers get a real share of productivity gains, innovation stops being a one-sided windfall and becomes shared progress. Third, on regulation capture and concentrated power. Money buys influence. That's a structural danger. We need transparency, strict campaign finance rules, rotating public service, strong antitrust enforcement, and penalties for corporate abuses. Make lobbying transparent. Limit revolving doors between government and firms. These are political fixes, yes, but they're practical and proven to shift incentives when the public demands them. Fourth, the environment. Market signals alone won't save us fast enough, but markets can mobilize solutions when paired with strong policy, enforceable emissions limits, public investment in clean tech, and clear penalties for pollution. The private sector's innovation capacity is enormous. Funnel it toward renewable energy, circular production, and restoration by making those choices profitable for business. Fifth, the moral and social harm. Markets can shape values, but culture, education, and civic life shape values too. We should teach solidarity, support community institutions, and promote civic duties alongside entrepreneurship. A humane capitalism is possible when we cultivate norms that prize care, not just consumption. Finally, about alternatives. Centrally planned systems have shown their own failures, shortages, lack of freedom, weak innovation. The real project is synthesis. Keep the market's creativity and freedom, but bind it with democratic control, social protections, and ecological limits. That means relentless public engagement, voting, organizing, demanding better rules. Because markets respond when citizens insist. So I agree with you that we must change the system, but I disagree about how. Let's reform and reclaim capitalism. Make it transparent, democratic, and caring. Let's combine freedom with fairness so the economy works for everyone. That's the practical, hopeful path forward, not tearing down what we have, but building something stronger with the power to improve many lives. Asterisk.
Jon, I appreciate the vision. More fairness, better rules, stronger democracy, but I remain unconvinced that polishing capitalism will be enough. Your fixes are sensible in theory, yet they keep running into the same barrier, the systems. Core incentives and concentrated power push back hard against real change. First, reforms get captured. You mentioned stronger rules, antitrust, and campaign finance limits, all needed. But history shows powerful actors find loopholes, move their money, or shift operations elsewhere. That's not a small annoyance, it's structural. When profit depends on blocking change, the people who benefit most will organize to protect that profit. Reforms that don't change who controls the economy won't stop that dynamic. Second, profit sharing and employee ownership are useful, but they often sit on the margins. A few companies may adopt them, while the majority keep extracting value. Worker co-ops prove models can work, but they remain tiny compared with giant corporations that shape markets and politics. We need systems that make democratic ownership the norm for basic services and essential industries, not rare exceptions. Third, on the environment, saying redirect private incentives underestimates how addicted our growth model is to extraction. Market signals, plus gradual policy, rarely match the speed the planet demands. We need hard limits, public control of commons, strict caps on extraction, and a planned transition away from fossil dependency. That means moving beyond the idea that markets alone will choose the planet over profit. Fourth, inequality and insecurity are not just messy side effects. They are how the system regenerates itself. Low wages, precarious work, and weakened unions are profitable strategies that firms use to stay competitive. If we only tinker around the edges, those strategies return. We need stronger structural changes. Universal public services, guaranteed living standards, and rules that prevent firms from externalizing costs onto society. Finally, let's be clear about values. You want markets to serve people. I want an economy designed around care and dignity first. That requires shifting power, democratizing workplaces, reclaiming key sectors for public control, and building institutions that do not rely on private profit to provide essentials. I'm not against innovation or freedom. I want them too. But the path Jon sketches risks preserving the same power imbalances that cause the harms in the first place. So yes, regulate and reform, but prioritize structural change that changes who owns, who decides, and what we measure as success. Only then can we move from tinkering at the margins to building an economy that truly serves people and planet.